There is a moment that quietly decides whether a person becomes disciplined or remains stuck repeating the same cycle. It rarely happens in public. It rarely looks dramatic. Most of the time, it happens in a small, ordinary moment when something becomes harder than expected. You begin a new routine. Maybe you decide to wake up earlier, improve your health, or finally focus on work you've been avoiding. The first few days feel promising. You feel motivated. You feel in control. Then something shifts. You wake up one morning and the energy isn't there. The work feels heavier than it did yesterday. The routine that looked simple suddenly feels inconvenient. And that is the exact moment when most people quietly step away from their commitment. Not because they are incapable, not because the goal was impossible, but because the mind interprets difficulty as a signal to stop. Think about how often this pattern appears in everyday life. Someone joins a gym with full determination. The first week is strong. The second week becomes uncomfortable. Muscles are sore, schedules feel tight, and suddenly missing one day feels reasonable. One day becomes 3. 3 becomes 2 weeks. Eventually, the routine disappears completely. From the outside, it looks like a lack of discipline. But the real problem is deeper. Most people have never learned how to respond when progress becomes uncomfortable. The moment difficulty appears, their mind quietly reframes the situation. This isn't the right time. Maybe this approach doesn't work. I'll start again later. In this video, you're going to see something important. Why the mind interprets difficulty as a reason to quit. Why intelligent, capable people fall into this trap more often than they realize. And how disciplined individuals train themselves to move in the opposite direction, continuing forward precisely when things begin to feel hard. Because the truth is simple. The moment things become difficult is not a signal to stop. It is usually the moment when progress has finally begun. If you want to stop quitting when things get hard, you have to understand something first. Quitting is rarely a sudden decision. Most people imagine quitting as a dramatic moment, someone giving up after a big failure or a serious setback. But in reality, quitting is usually the result of a few predictable mental patterns that quietly shift your behavior over time. Once you see these patterns clearly, something changes. You stop thinking the problem is your personality, and you start recognizing the mechanism behind the behavior. There are 3 internal patterns that usually cause people to quit when things become difficult. The first is short-term emotional waiting. Your brain naturally gives more importance to immediate discomfort than long-term rewards. When a task becomes difficult, the mind magnifies the pain of the present moment and minimizes the value of future results. So the workout feels heavier than the future health it will create. The work project feels more exhausting than the career progress it could produce. In that moment, quitting feels logical. The second pattern is expectation collapse. Most people begin new habits with unrealistic expectations about how smooth the process will be. They imagine that motivation will carry them forward and that progress will appear quickly. But when the first real resistance appears, boredom, fatigue, slow results, the mind interprets that friction as a signal that something is wrong. Instead of recognizing difficulty as part of the process, they assume the plan is failing. The third pattern is the comfort reset effect. Every time you step away from a difficult commitment, your brain experiences relief. That relief feels good, even if it is temporary. And because the brain remembers that relief, it begins encouraging the same behavior the next time discomfort appears. This is why quitting becomes easier each time it happens. A simple example appears in the workplace. Someone begins learning a new skill that could improve their career. The first few sessions feel confusing. Progress is slow. The material feels overwhelming. Instead of pushing through that stage, the person steps back and returns to familiar tasks. The mind experiences relief and quietly records that decision as the preferred response to difficulty. Over time, this pattern trains a person to retreat whenever progress becomes uncomfortable. But once you understand these mechanisms, you can begin responding to difficulty in a completely different way. The moment difficulty appears, most people assume something has gone wrong. They assume the plan isn't working, the timing isn't right, or their motivation has disappeared. But if you observe disciplined people carefully, you'll notice they interpret difficulty very differently. For them, difficulty is not a warning sign. It is a checkpoint. It is the moment where the process begins separating those who continue from those who quietly step away. And this separation happens through a few specific patterns that appear in everyday life. The first pattern appears when initial enthusiasm fades. At the beginning of any commitment, progress feels exciting. The brain releases energy because the idea of change feels fresh. You wake up early, start the project, follow the routine, and everything seems manageable. But enthusiasm is temporary. Within a few days or weeks, the novelty disappears. The task itself hasn't changed, but the emotional boost that made it easier is gone. Now the activity feels ordinary. This is the stage where many people begin drifting away from their commitment. Consider someone trying to improve their physical health. During the first week, they go to the gym with determination. Every workout feels like progress. But after a short time, soreness appears. The workouts become repetitive. Results are slower than expected. Suddenly the routine feels heavier. The mind begins offering small adjustments. Take today off. You can make up for it tomorrow. You've already done enough this week. Each of these thoughts sounds reasonable. None of them feels like quitting. But when these small adjustments accumulate, the original commitment begins to weaken. Disciplined individuals recognize this stage immediately. They understand that enthusiasm was never supposed to carry the process forever. It was only meant to start the movement. As Rohn once said, motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Once the emotional excitement fades, the only thing left is structure. And structure is where discipline begins. The second pattern appears through progress frustration. Many goals require a long period where results are not immediately visible. During this stage, the effort feels real, but the reward still seems distant. This creates a dangerous mental trap. Your mind starts questioning whether the effort is worth it. Imagine someone learning a new professional skill that could significantly improve their career. The first lessons are confusing. Concepts take time to understand. Progress feels slow. After a few weeks, the mind begins to produce doubt. Maybe this isn't the right path. Maybe I'm not naturally good at this. Maybe I should focus on something easier. These thoughts do not appear because the person lacks potential. They appear because the brain dislikes long periods without visible reward. A grounded example illustrates this clearly. A young employee once decided to improve his financial knowledge. Every evening after work, he spent 30 minutes studying basic investment principles. The material felt complicated at first, and for several weeks he struggled to understand the details. Many evenings he considered stopping. The progress felt invisible. But after several months, something shifted. The ideas that once felt confusing started connecting. Decisions that previously seemed intimidating became understandable. What changed was not his intelligence. What changed was his willingness to remain in a stage where results were not immediately obvious. Most people quit during that stage. Not because the goal is impossible, but because the process requires patience longer than they expected. The third pattern appears when temporary discomfort is misinterpreted as a permanent problem. The human mind has a strong instinct to avoid discomfort. When something feels difficult or stressful, the brain naturally looks for ways to escape the situation. This instinct is useful in situations involving danger, but it becomes destructive when applied to long-term goals. For example, consider someone trying to build a consistent work routine. At the beginning, they commit to focusing on meaningful tasks for several hours each day. The first few days feel productive. Then an afternoon arrives where concentration feels difficult. Distractions seem more appealing. The mind feels tired. At that moment, the brain produces a simple conclusion: today just isn't the right day. So the person steps away from the work. The relief feels immediate. The stress disappears. The mind feels lighter. But what actually happened? The brain learned that discomfort can be eliminated by abandoning the task. If this pattern repeats often enough, it becomes automatic. The moment difficulty appears, the mind instantly searches for an exit. Disciplined individuals break this pattern by treating discomfort differently. Instead of asking whether something feels easy, they ask a different question. Is this still the direction I decided to follow? If the answer is yes, the presence of discomfort becomes irrelevant. They continue the work. Not because they enjoy the difficulty, but because they understand something important. Discomfort is often the price of progress. The moment when something feels challenging is frequently the exact moment when your abilities are expanding. This is why stopping at the first sign of difficulty quietly prevents growth. The mind believes it is protecting you from stress, but in reality it is protecting you from improvement. Once you begin recognizing these patterns, fading enthusiasm, slow progress, and temporary discomfort, quitting becomes easier to detect. And the moment you can detect it, you gain something powerful. The ability to continue forward while the mind is still suggesting that you should stop. Once you see clearly why people quit when things become difficult, the meaning of discipline begins to change. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to work harder. They imagine it as a constant battle against laziness or weakness. But that view misunderstands the real structure of disciplined behavior. Discipline is not constant struggle. It is the quiet decision that difficulty will not be used as a reason to stop. When that decision becomes part of your identity, your relationship with effort changes completely. Instead of asking, "Do I feel capable today?" you begin asking a different question. Is this still the standard I chose for myself? That small shift removes a large amount of unnecessary negotiation. Your mind will still react to discomfort. It will still prefer easier options. That is part of human nature. But those reactions no longer control the final decision. You already know the direction. And over time, something subtle begins to compound. Every moment you continue despite resistance sends a signal to your identity. You reinforce the idea that your standards are stable, not temporary. At first, the results look ordinary. You finish tasks that once felt overwhelming. You maintain routines that used to collapse after a few difficult days. You stop restarting the same goals over and over again. But the long-term impact becomes much larger than those small moments suggest. Your work becomes more reliable because you no longer depend on perfect conditions. Your habits strengthen because they survive periods of discomfort. Your confidence grows because your actions prove that your commitments are real. This is the compounding effect of discipline. Each decision to continue forward makes the next decision slightly easier. Not because the work becomes effortless, but because your identity becomes more stable. You begin trusting your own standards. And that trust changes how you approach every challenge. Instead of asking whether something will be easy, you focus on whether the direction is worth following. If the direction is correct, difficulty becomes part of the process rather than a reason to retreat. Over months and years, that mindset quietly separates those who constantly restart their goals from those who steadily move toward them. Because progress rarely belongs to the person who begins with the most excitement. It usually belongs to the person who simply refuses to quit when the excitement disappears. Every meaningful goal eventually reaches a point where continuing feels harder than stopping. That moment arrives in different forms. A routine becomes repetitive, progress slows down, effort feels heavier than it did in the beginning. And in that quiet moment, the mind offers a simple solution: step away. Most people follow that suggestion without realizing what they are practicing. They are not just quitting a task, they are reinforcing a habit. A habit where difficulty becomes the signal to stop. Over time, that pattern shapes how they approach everything: work, health, learning, relationships. Each challenge becomes another place where the mind quietly asks for retreat. But discipline grows in the opposite direction. It grows in the moment when difficulty appears and you recognize it for what it is, not a warning, but a normal stage of progress. The work may still feel uncomfortable. The effort may still require patience. But the decision no longer depends on those feelings. Because once you understand that every meaningful path includes resistance, quitting loses its logic. And when quitting loses its logic, something simple becomes possible. You continue moving forward long after most people have stepped away.